So you know that scene from Seinfeld where Jerry is sitting in a chair smoking a cigar while seeing money piled up in front of him for winning a bet? I feel like that's the Seattle Kraken when it comes time to draft players in the NHL Draft. They drafted 7 Canadian Hockey League players this year, but I like almost all of them looking at this list, so let's get into it. At 8th overall, they drafted my 3rd ranked player on my board in Berkeley Catton. I don't understand. Berkeley Catton is great. He is such a good puck distributor, he sees the ice impeccably well, he drives unbelievable results in my data, and in ways where I can easily see it working in the NHL. The guy that constantly comes to mind for me is Clayton Keller. People said that Catton might not work out as a center. Okay, fine. You put him on the wing and he's gonna be great. I don't really see the issue with that. At 8th overall, yeah, I would probably be pounding the table pretty hard for a Berkeley Catton as well. I think Seattle has now added a tremendous amount of great forward potential over the last few years. We'll see how much they can extract out of guys like Bernier and Wright and Catton, but based on how I saw Shane Wright at the end of the season, and based on where I think Bernier could bounce back to, they might end up with some really, really great players. I was surprised to see them draft a forward here, but really pleasantly surprised to see them land Berkeley Catton. I was really, really happy with that selection, and Kraken fans should be too. At 40th overall, they drafted a guy that I had slightly lower on my list in Julius Miettinen. I think Miettinen does project pretty well as a 3rd or 4th line center in the NHL. He's very positionally aware, he gets around the ice okay, he makes smart plays, and in the offensive zone, it's pretty simple. Go to the net, make things happen. He does that. It usually works. Miettinen's a pretty simple profile. He's not super flashy or anything, but he does drive decent results in the games that I tracked, and in the games I saw, he was also pretty decent. So we'll see what happens. I probably would have gone a little bit of a different direction here, but Miettinen is a pretty solid pick that could round out that forward group that is really high on firepower so far. At 63rd overall, they drafted Nathan Villeneuve, who I am really pleasantly surprised was drafted that quickly. I really like Nathan Villeneuve. I think there's tons of potential in his game that just hasn't come out enough yet. He is a wrecking ball of a hockey player. He is a violent player, driving around the ice, hitting guys as much as he possibly can. But there's also underrated pace and skill in his game. I think there's some good finesse moments that were really impressive out of Villeneuve this year that went really underreported. I will say that for Villeneuve, everything kind of hinges on his ability to get into scoring areas more often himself. He's a very physical player, he's very determined, but in the offensive zone he ended up stuck around the perimeter a lot, trying to funnel pucks into the middle through his passing, and just lobbing pucks on net from the perimeter. He's got a good wrist shot, so I'd like to see him use it from more important scoring areas on the ice. I think there's tons of upside with Villeneuve here, and as the 3rd guy you're drafting, I had him ranked a little bit higher than this. I think it's a good pick for Seattle and adds another flavor to their cupboard that does have already a lot of firepower, but he brings a little bit of a different style of firepower that I think is really, really interesting. At 73rd, they drafted Alexis Bernier, who is lanky and tall. I didn't really see it that much with Bernier, and I have the bar in Quebec really, really high for when I start to get behind a player, but he's the 4th player you drafted. You can give him a long trajectory to play in the Quebec League and then the American League and see what you got in a few years, and maybe there's something. He just didn't really have the skill or the mobility really that got me interested to the point where I would draft him here. But outside of this, I did really like their draft class. At 88th, they drafted Kim Saarinen, who some considered one of the best goaltenders in the draft, and I do really like what I saw out of Saarinen, and his advanced numbers did look pretty good in my work. He was a top 10 goalie for me on my list, which to me, getting in the mid-rounds makes a lot of sense. And again, as the 5th guy you're drafting, a goalie who has some good results, you could do a lot worse, and I think Kim Saarinen's a good bet. At 105th overall, though, they drafted a player in my top 40 in Ollie Josephson. I love this guy. Again, when you're looking at Berkeley Catton, I think if you really discount him, you end up with a guy like Josephson, a really, really high-end transition player who can get the puck from point A to point B really effectively and play physically and play intensely enough where you might look at him and see a smaller player but go, yeah, but I don't really care because he really, really tries out there and just drives good results overall. I do think in the offensive zone he does need to slow things down a little bit here and there, see the ice a little bit better and not just try to shoehorn everything in himself. But the upside with Josephson is huge, and I really, really liked watching him this year, and at 105th overall, you could have done a lot worse. Then at 141st, they drafted one of my personal favorites from this year in Clark Caswell of the Swift Current Broncos. This was way later than I thought he would go, and I know people are doubters of Caswell, but he probably is one of the best analytical case studies for me in this year's draft, and I really, really love what he brings to the game. Super, super, super smart, super slippery, pretty skilled, really good shooter, pretty good playmaker as well. drives a lot of potential results and scored over a point a game and looked pretty good doing it. I've heard some complaints about his skating and the pace of his game, but to me he works around it really, really well, and if the results are this good with these issues, and if these issues improve, he should turn out to be pretty good, I would say. So at 141st, he was one of the best players left on my board, and I would have absolutely no problem taking a chance on him there. At 202nd, they're betting on mobility by drafting Jakub Fibigr from the Mississauga Steelheads. Fibigr is a player who I watched a few times this year, and I think that moving the puck was a bit of an issue for him, but boy can he ever skate. And I honestly don't mind a team drafting a defenseman who is doing pretty well offensively, who really skates very, very well, much better than a lot of the players drafted ahead of him. Fibigr has the advantage of youth on his side. I think he should take a more and more offensive role with Mississauga, and if he can use his feet a little bit more to generate a little bit more offense in more projectable ways, as well as defend a little bit better than he does, and move the puck a little bit better seeing the ice, then I think there could be something here. And at 202nd, again, just a good upside probability bet that I think may work out for Seattle in the long run, even if he is a bit of a long shot. So for me, the Kraken get a 1B. I really have a hard time picking through their class as a whole and finding a whole lot of faults. For me, guys like Josephson and Caswell could have easily been picks in that 40, 63, and 70 slots, and Nathan Villeneuve certainly belongs in there as well. Berkeley Catton could be one of the steals of the draft. Kim Saarinen's a pretty good goaltender. Fibigr is a good upside bet with low probability, but there could be something there. And I do think that Alexis Bernier brings some level of interesting possibilities with what he brings. They're just not there yet. So all in all, while I can nitpick and maybe there are players picked at 40 and 73 that I might have looked at a little bit harder, I think they ended up with a great draft class filled with potential NHL players that could fill a variety of roles and just add to one of the best stables in hockey. So that's it for the Seattle Kraken. If you liked the video, you can check out our description box for our Fanatics affiliate link where we'll get a small kickback on anything you buy in the store. Or you could go to Scouching.ca where a subscription gets you access to a private Discord server, as well as plenty of cool data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects around the world, and plenty of other cool goodies you can check out there as well. So that's it for Seattle, and we're moving on to another favorite of mine, the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll see you then.